A tax freight train is bearing down on your retirement. To protect yourself, you'll have to harness the power of zero.
Hi there, this is David McKnight. Welcome to the Power of Zero show. Glad you're with us for another week. I'm the best-selling author of The Power of Zero, Look Before You Lerp, The Volatility Shield, and a new book coming out called Tax-Free Income for Life. Excited to show you in the coming weeks how you can pre-order that and how you can get a free copy of the first chapter just to wet your whistle a little bit. For those of you who are looking for an advisor to help you navigate the pitfalls that stand between you and the 0% tax bracket, head on over to davidmcknight.com. If you're an advisor who wants to help in transitioning your practice to a Power of Zero practice, you can head over to powerofzero.com. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter, folks. I keep reminding you, at McKnight & Co., at McKnight & Co., and don't forget to subscribe. All right. I thought that I would share with you an interesting story that some of you may have heard, but many of you I know have not. And I reserve the right on this podcast to not always preach about financial things. So I'm going to give you guys a break this week and give you something that was an important experience in my life, and not just important, but harrowing. One of my most popular podcasts of all time was one that I did about a year ago called The Surprising Tax Benefits of Puerto Rico. Basically, what happens is if you have a qualifying business and you can move to Puerto Rico, they will waive your federal tax, waive your state tax, and charge you a flat 4% tax. So it has a net effect of sort of knocking a zero off your tax bill. So as many of you know, I moved to Puerto Rico about 3 years ago, and there is an experience that happened within 6 weeks of our getting here that changed my life and my family's life, and I want to share with you a sliver of that story because it tells you a little bit about what we went through, but also tells you a little bit about what the people of Puerto Rico have since gone through. Now, here in Puerto Rico, the social distancing measures are still pretty stringent, so we can't go to church. In fact, we hold church in our home. We have done so for the last, seems like about 3 months now. And over the years in my church, I've given quite a few sermons, so they've stacked up. So I've been, when we hold church in our home, I give these sermons. So I dig them out of my file, I dust them off, and I give these sermons to my family, and they don't seem to mind. And one of the sermons was based on the experience that we had in the immediate wake of Hurricane Maria back in the fall of 2017. As I read this, keep in mind that this is going to read like it happened just a couple of weeks ago. I didn't bother updating the references to time, but just recognize that I wrote this three years ago. And while Puerto Rico has gotten a lot better, there still are some people who are in need. So certainly donate to Red Cross, other organizations. If you fly into Puerto Rico and you look down and you see a blue tarp on top of a house, that's somebody who still does not have a roof on their house. And we're going on 3 years here. So let me jump in here. I begin. A few months ago, I moved my family and my business to Puerto Rico. When doing the pros and cons list for Puerto Rico, never once did the word hurricane come up. In fact, the last Category 5 hurricane to hit Puerto Rico was nearly 90 years ago. Hurricanes in Puerto Rico are hardly ever mentioned in the same sentence. Apparently, the El Yunque rainforest has its own weather system that nearly always pushes hurricanes to the north at the last moment. So imagine our surprise when forecasters predicted a Category 5 direct hit that for the first time since 1928 did not shift to the north. For the McKnights, the hit could not have been more direct. Not only did Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, its eye, along with the hurricane's most intense winds, moved almost directly over the town where our home is located. Unfortunately, by the time it was obvious that it was going to be a direct hit, 3 or 4 days beforehand, all the flights out of San Juan were completely booked. So we battened down the hatches and hunkered down in our home, bracing for the impact. The night the hurricane hit was not one soon to be forgotten. The fierce winds began around midnight, Tuesday night, and progressively got stronger and more aggressive through the early morning hours of Wednesday. The winds were as loud as a freight train right outside our window. Our family of 9 found the most secure room in the house, protected by a series of 3 cement walls, and waited out the storm. The most harrowing part of the whole ordeal was the uncertainty of it all. Would our house hold up? Would the windows blow out, allowing the hurricane to wreak its havoc on the inside of the house? Was the worst past us, or was it still to come? Around 2 a.m. that morning, we heard the sound of breaking glass. We were certain that the hurricane was now blowing windows out of the house. When we looked out one of the windows, however, we saw the ground littered with ceramic shingles that had been ripped off the roof by the wind. We would later find that while our roof did hold up, nearly all the shingles on the eastern side were completely torn off. The damage sustained by the rainforest that surrounds our house was both tragic and visually arresting. The trees were almost completely despoiled of their leaves, and the vast majority of them broken in half. They say the devastation of a Category 5 hurricane is similar to the detonation of a large bomb. This comparison is an apt one. Our community had turned into a war zone. As the danger subsided, we began the process of mopping up our flooded floors and clearing the fallen trees that littered our driveway. The most pressing issues were that we had neither electricity, running water, or communication of any sort, no cell phones, and no internet. Now, we did have a generator and stored water, but knew the generator would only last about a week, and the water 3 weeks at best. And we were among the most prepared of our neighbors. So it became a race against time to try to evacuate my family before the veil of civility in our town began to wear thin. The first few days, the airport was shut down, so there was no coming in or out. Once the airport did open, everyone began to try to leave the island all at once. I had heard rumors that there were tiny windows of cell phone coverage in San Juan, about 30 minutes away by car, so I went there to try to secure flights for my family. This process involved driving around with my cell phone held up high, gauging whether the signal was strong enough to sustain a call. I drove around for an hour before I was able to successfully connect and schedule flights. I got 8 tickets for my family for Thursday, 8 days after the hurricane, and resolved to use the reservation I'd set weeks earlier for myself. Although my family was now booked and confirmed, their flight held, and they made it off the island without incident. I soon learned that my own reservation had been canceled. When I went to the airport to try to scrap my way onto a plane, I learned that all confirmed reservations had been canceled, and United was now offering spots on their plane on a first-come, first-served basis. There were only 300 spots available. I judged that there were nearly 200 people in front of me in the line, so I thought I had a fighting chance. What I did not realize was that these 200 people were holding spots for another 120 people. By the time they closed the flight, I was 20 people away from the counter. Back to the drawing board. After another trip to San Juan and groping around for cell phone coverage, I was able to schedule another flight for a week later on Tuesday. Having learned my lesson the first time, I decided to schedule a backup flight for the day prior. Unfortunately, another series of aggressive weather systems were forecast to come through Puerto Rico on both of those days, so the airlines preemptively canceled both of those flights. My family became aware of this and was able to reschedule my flight for Saturday prior. Problem was, they had no way of letting me know. So my rescheduled flight came and went while I was completely unaware. A dozen people in the U.S. tried to get a hold of me via satellite phone, cell phone, email, Facebook, but again, all lines of communication were down. By the time I did make contact with family in the U.S., they told me that no new flights were available for another 7 to 10 days. In the meantime, the number of canceled speaking engagements, which is part of what keeps the lights on at the McKnights, were beginning to pile up. I was at the end of my rope. And then a miracle happened. Against all odds, my friend Brian Sawyer was able to somehow, someway finagle a confirmation with United for that Sunday afternoon. I chalk this up to divine intervention. A half dozen people had been tirelessly calling airlines on my behalf for an entire day, yet Brian somehow made it through and secured a ticket within 5 minutes. I nearly cried when I got the news. But the adventure was not yet over. At 4 a.m. on the morning of my departure, the generator ran out of diesel. This was problematic because the generator powered the security shutters that covered all the windows and doors in the house. No generator, no getting out of the house, and no catching my flight. Fortunately, we had inadvertently left the laundry door on the second story unshuttered. So early Sunday morning, I hauled my 2 suitcases and a briefcase down a ladder, which we had to slide down a palm tree to get access to, scaled a fence, and made it safely to my car. At 2:30 p.m., I boarded a nonstop flight to Chicago where my wife picked me up nearly 5 hours later. And that's how I escaped Puerto Rico. And then I get into what was at the time the prognosis for Puerto Rico. I say the prognosis for Puerto Rico, unfortunately, is not good given the breadth of the devastation to the infrastructure and the lack of manpower working to restore it. I estimate that it will be 6 to 8 months before Puerto Rico once again has power. Running water will eventually be restored, but the lack of electricity will keep many businesses shuttered and its employees out of work. As resources grow thin, Puerto Rico may see looting and other crimes of desperation. Remember to keep Puerto Rico in your prayers and don't hesitate to make donations to organizations who are in a position to make a difference, such as the Red Cross. Above all, make sure that you and your family are prepared to weather life's storms, be they climactic, temporal, or spiritual. These things arise when you least expect it, and the best time to prepare is when the seas are calm and the winds serene. Thanks to everyone who prayed for me and my family. Please continue to pray for the rest of Puerto Rico who still find themselves in harm's way. So I guess if there is a financial message to be found in all this, there's not always a financial message to be found in every experience in life, no matter what my podcasts might tell you. But there may be a financial message embedded in this experience, and that's that these types of sort of cataclysmic life events happen when you least expect it, right? I mean, we were enjoying life in Puerto Rico, and within 5 days, our life was absolutely turned upside down. We were facing imminent death for all we knew, okay? And that's how a lot of these events in life happen. They happen when you least expect it. So you can't, in the very moment that you need to prepare, it may be too late to prepare. So if there is a financial message in all of this, it's you have to be prepared ahead of time for all of the contingencies that life throws your way. And maybe it's the death of a loved one. Maybe it's a disability. Maybe it's a premature death of a breadwinner. Maybe it's a long-term care event. Maybe it's just some sort of loss of job or what have you. These are the types of events that happen when you least expect it. I don't think that we anticipated COVID-19. We didn't anticipate a lot of the unrest in the wake of the George Floyd death. And these are all things that impact us directly or indirectly. So I guess as I reflect upon this experience, it's that there are storms in life. You have to be prepared for them. So a little bit of a different message today, folks, but I hope you got something out of it. It's something that I wanted to share because for those of you who know me, it's something that really impacted me. It impacted my family, and I felt very fortunate that I was able to get off the island when I did. And for those of you who don't know the rest of the story, we went and we spent the school year, basically the school that my kids had been going to basically closed. And so as not to have our kids miss a year of school, we went back to Wisconsin. Our house hadn't sold yet, so we were able to move right back into our house, stuck our kids in school. They were welcomed with open arms as sort of these refugees, as it were, from this hurricane-stricken island. They went right into back into their old schools. And we were able to finish the school year, so they didn't miss any school in terms of getting credit for semesters. And then at the end of that, which is about 2 years ago, by the end of that school year, we moved back to Puerto Rico, and it's been smooth sailing ever since. So we've been in Puerto Rico, all told, about 2 years if you add it all up. But we love Puerto Rico. We love being here. We love the tax benefits, certainly, but we love the people and we love the weather. I remember when I was in Wisconsin, I'm like, I'm going to be cold for the rest of my life. And now I'm thinking, gosh, I'm going to be warm for the rest of my life. So it's for those of you who like weather, come visit us in Puerto Rico. Thanks, everybody, for being on the show. Once again, if you're looking for an advisor to help you get to zero, davidmcknight.com. If you're an advisor yourself and you're looking for help in how to get your clients to the 0% tax bracket, go to powerzero.com. Once again, subscribe. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you next week.